So let me tell you about one specific moment that tested every single thing that I just said. Long after our divorce, we were both landing in Hawaii at the same time. I offered to fly to the island that they were at to spend 2 days with my son. I was giving them 2 days of child-free time in Hawaii. I thought it was a very genuine gesture to give them some solo relationship time. Unfortunately, that is not how it was received. And it resulted in people who I had loved for a long time turning on me. And it got ugly. I wanted nothing more than to show up and to argue back, to defend why I did what I did, to share my side of the story. And I dumped all of it in the notes app on my phone, wrote and argued and said what I needed to say and defended myself. Everything got dumped out. I let myself feel all of it, the fury, the grief, the injustice of being misread by people that I had loved. And then I rewrote it over and over until the blame fell away, until what was left was just the truth of why I had shown up the way that I do as a co-parent, until it became who I actually am. And then I changed my flight. I found a $100 hotel that was nicer than where I'd been staying. I rented a beach chair and I let someone else take care of me. And that is conscious uncoupling, not their version, but mine. Welcome to the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast dedicated to helping women navigate the emotional journey that is divorce. I'm your host, Erica, and if you're trying to figure out life after the big D, welcome to the club. Whether you're contemplating divorce or dealing with the aftermath or any of the many phases in between, the club has got you covered. Each week, you'll hear stories from women who have been in your shoes. This isn't about spilling tea on divorce details. This is about giving you the tools to take control of your own healing journey. Listen in weekly for advice, tips, and tools to help you move through each stage of the process. Welcome back to another episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club. I'm your host, Erica. We are still in our hair growing out saga of I don't even know what to do with it. Tuck it back, put it up. Who knows? But this haircut cannot come soon enough. This week I was actually scrolling. In fact, it was this morning. I was scrolling and there was a post that stopped me cold. It was about Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin's conscious uncoupling. Do you guys recall when that hit the news waves? I remember thinking, oh my God, this is the most Hollywood thing I have ever seen created. Most of us probably rolled our eyes. It felt very privileged. It felt completely different than how we had always been seeing divorce. And it just felt not applicable to real life. But when I read that post, there were pieces in it that it articulated that I had never been able to really see stepping back from it. You know, when you're in it, you don't really realize kind of the bigger themes or what you're doing. But when you get past it, you're able to look back and say, oh, those are the words. That's exactly what happened. And so underneath this concept of conscious uncoupling is something that's actually very powerful about two people choosing to end a relationship without destroying each other. Here's the twist I want to put on it. What if there's only one of you? Can you still do it? Can you still choose to consciously uncouple if both aren't on board? That's what I want to explore today because I believe you can. So let me share a few lines directly from the post because I found them to be very powerful. A deliberate decision to process the grief of the ending without directing the pain at each other. To respond from care rather than hurt. The couples that destroy each other after divorce are not the ones who loved less. They are the ones that cannot separate the past pain from the current parenting. And love does not have to end when the relationship does. And when I read those lines, I realized something because I felt like she was speaking about the way that I chose to process through my co-parenting and my divorce. That was exactly the choices I had made to rise above the pain that he had caused me and instead choose what was in the best interest of our child. So nobody called that conscious uncoupling. Because I thought conscious uncoupling was something that you had to do together, right? We've all heard about Gwyneth and Chris had to do therapy alone and together, that they created this plan together. But ours was not a mutual decision. He made it very clear that he was not going to work together the way that I had envisioned. So this journey of conscious uncoupling, it was mine alone. But it still had the same core values and grounded approach. So here's what I want to offer you today. Conscious uncoupling does not have to be a decision you make together. It's a decision you make for yourself about how you're going to carry yourself through this. Can we even just call it being a good human? How we choose to treat anyone as the relationship shifts, about who we are going to be in the middle of the hardest thing that you have ever had to do. Your ex doesn't have to agree. He does not have to participate. He does not even have to know that this is what you're choosing, because this is entirely about who you choose to be and who you want to show up as. How do you want to interact with others? How do you want to operate in this world? Choose who you want to be. So when I was triggered, I did the internal work before I reacted. I took time responding. I only replied when I was in alignment with my own heart. I visualized the end goal. Everyone on the other side of this was happy, was whole, was okay. That was the vision that I held. And I challenged every belief or every thought that showed up in my mind that positioned me against him, that he was winning and I was not, that I was so far behind that I would never figure it out. I asked instead of demanded, and not because he deserved it, but because I did. And I know that these things, take time before you react. Don't react, respond. All of those things, you've heard them before. But what is at the root of it is doing the deep personal work to be free of the emotions that get wrapped up in it. So let me tell you about one specific moment that tested every single thing that I just said. So long after our divorce, it was actually 2021. We were both landing in Hawaii at the same time. So I was in Hawaii for a retreat. My ex, the other woman, and my son were in Hawaii on a different island for his grandfather's funeral. We're both overcrossing at the time. Not for the same reasons, but it just happened that the universe aligned it. So I offered to fly to the island that they were at. One, because I did want to pay my respects for his grandfather. This was a man that I had known for a long time. In fact, the last time I had seen him, long after our divorce, we had spent hours. He was telling stories about his military service and the kids growing up and kind of reminiscing on the past. So I did want to pay my respects. I knew that any sort of funeral and death is hard on a family, but I also was showing up to spend 2 days with my son. So I thought I was offering something really nice for my ex and the other woman. I was giving them 2 days of child-free time in Hawaii. It was her first time there. If you've been on any vacation, you know that an adult vacation is very different than when you have a young child tagging along with you. And so I offered to take on the expense to come to the other island to get my own hotel on the other side of the, main street. So we weren't next to each other. And to take our son for 2 days. For my son, he wanted to have time with both parents in Hawaii. It made sense to him. We are right there. We're literally like a $59 flight away to island hop between the island I was on and where they were at. Why would I not do this? So I thought it was a very genuine gesture to give them some solo relationship time. Unfortunately, that is not how it was received. It was received as me inserting myself, showing up at a family gathering with a family that I'm no longer a part of. It caused the family to take sides. There were family members who chose his side, or more appropriately, the other woman's side, because she was the one that seemed to be speaking up the most or having the most problems about it, the most insecurities about it, and it really stirred the pot. And so in the midst of this highly emotional time of burying their grandfather or their father, there now was this added chaos. And it resulted in people who I had loved for a long time, people who I had respected, turning on me. And it got ugly and it got very triggering very quickly. There's a lot of grief underneath, a lot of feelings being stirred up for me, because now not only was I reflecting on when I've lost my own grandparents and what it must feel like for them, but now I was also grieving the loss of an extended family that, while we didn't talk regularly, I thought we would always be able to operate under the understanding that the marriage was what it was and it wasn't meant to last forever, but we're extended family because there's a child in the middle, and that we can be adults who, adult to adult, like who each other is. Doesn't mean we still hang out all the time. It doesn't mean we talk on the phone or even comment on social media, but that there were still these lines connecting us. So much grief got turned up as some close family members started to say things that then were sent back to me, so I knew what people were saying. That really hurt. It polarized everything. It cast me as a woman who refused to let go, which I probably found most offensive because I had very much let go. Here I was in Hawaii thinking I was doing this kind thing for them. It wasn't for me to take on this extra expense and this extra time. It was for them. But the spiral that it created, the chaos it created, truly ruined my last day. So when it happened in the middle of it, I wanted nothing more than to show up and to argue back, to have the quick verbal argument that is so fiery. In my life and in my past, I wanted to defend what I did. I wanted to share my side of the story, and I dumped all of it in the notes app on my phone. Stood out on the lanai at our hotel room. My son was inside and just spiraled and wrote and argued and said what I needed to say and defended myself. Everything got dumped out. And it really did ruin that last night that we were there. I wrote every defense, every call out, everything I wanted to throw at them. And I let myself feel all of it. The fury, the grief, the injustice of being misread by people that I had loved. And then I rewrote it over and over until the blame fell away, until what was left was just the truth of why I had shown up the way that I do as a co-parent. I wrote about creating an open, loving experience for my son. I wrote about love not changing when paperwork does, only evolving into something else. I wrote about rising above judgment to walk a path lined with love and acceptance. No blame, no call outs, just a very clear boundary around how I allow people to treat me and what I choose to walk away from. And then I posted it. Once I had done the deep work, the shadow work, to really uncover why was I so hurt? What was I grieving? What was I upset about? When I could see them as humans having a human experience, when I could see her triggered, experiencing Hawaii, thinking that ex-wife is still showing up, I got to a peaceful place with it. I had my way. It served what it needed to serve to help me understand where I was, and it created a very clear boundary on who I was no longer connected to online. It also empowered me to make the decision to extend my trip instead of leaving on a ruined note. I refused to allow my ex and the other woman to continue to take things from me. I refused to allow however they wanted to act or what they stirred up to knock me out of being in a heart-centered space. So I said, I wonder what it would look like. I'm not ready to come home on a sour note. I don't want to end this trip feeling this way. This trip has been amazing. I had one of the best trips, best 48 hours with my son in Hawaii. We walked all over. We had such amazing food. He couldn't believe that I jumped in the pool because I rarely get my hair wet. I really like to enjoy the sun on the side, all the things. And so I inquired. I looked into Delta. That's who I'd flown in from. It was only 10,000 miles to change my flight one day out. What a no-brainer. 10,000 miles, done. I looked for a hotel and found a last-minute deal for $100, and turned out it was a much nicer hotel than I had spent the entire trip at. I rented a beach chair from one of the little stands. Someone brings you things, takes care of you, and got to just lay there on my last day. I chose to end my Hawaii trip on my terms. I refused to allow them to continue to impact my life. And that, to me, is what conscious uncoupling actually looks like from the inside. It's not peaceful. It's not pretty. It does not mean that you don't feel the fury. It means that you feel all of it. And I felt all of it, and you choose what you want to do with it. You vent into your notes app, you spiral, you sit in the anger, and then you transmute it. You rewrite it until it becomes something that reflects who you actually are instead of what the pain wants you to be. It's not weakness. It's not letting people walk all over you. I posted that piece with a very clear boundary around what I will and will not accept, around the rules that I was writing for my life, how I wanted to be and show up in this world as a parent, as a co-parent, and as a woman. And you can rise above and still hold your ground. They are not opposites. They are not things that they are not opposites. They can live alongside of each other. Here's what I want you to hear in this. How you choose to move through this phase of your life has absolutely nothing to do with your ex. Nothing. You do not have to wait for him to become a better person. You do not have to wait for the drama to stop. You do not have to wait for anyone to see your side or validate your choice or apologize, no matter how badly you want it. When you do the hard internal work, when you own your part, when you choose to respond from your values instead of your wounds, you become truly free, and you don't have to avoid them. You don't have to brace for impact. You don't have to worry about whether or not the ex is showing up at this next school event. You just get to be, because you built yourself from the inside out instead of waiting for the outside to change. You stopped giving your power away, whether he will ever get it. He might not. And that's not the point. The point is that you are becoming in the process. You are taking your power back. You are standing in your true knowing of who you are and who you want to be. So what does it look like in active practice? When you get triggered, and you're going to get triggered, first and foremost, you need to pause. Pause before responding, even if it takes hours or days. Vent the ugly truth somewhere safe. And I'm actually going to tell you not to vent it to a friend. Why? Because that builds more momentum. They're bouncing off. They're fueling the fire. I want you to vent it somewhere safe, like a notes app, a journal, a voice memo, but you need to get it all out. The real ugly truth, everything you want to say and yell and scream at your ex, write it down in that journal. Then when you've got all that big emotion, when it has run its course, when it is starting to lessen, then I want you to start to rewrite it. Rewrite what's actually true. Take any space where you see in that sentence where there is a judgment, take the judgment and rewrite it with no judgment. If you are to see something from a neutral space of everybody is just trying their hardest, instead of adding more negativity, how else could you choose to see it? What do your values say? What would the version of you that you are becoming say instead? Then visualize that end goal. Everyone is on the other side. And I did this visualization daily for months while we were separated. It was one of the strongest visualizations I did to try and understand what I really wanted next. I was so balled up and trying to understand what needed to happen that I sat and visualized everyone, all three of us, okay on the other side. That when the dust settled, when we figured out what the next answer was, that we were all okay. I let that feeling in my body, in my mind, guide my actions. And then I challenged every us versus them belief. He's so much farther. How come he moved on so quickly? I hear it all the time. He had no problem moving on. Well, you don't know that. Oh, he looks so happy in his new relationship. You don't know that either. But you have to stop thinking that it is always a battle. So ask instead of demand. For a while, I thought a strong boundary meant I was telling my ex what needed to happen with our son. And instead, I shifted that to an ask with an explanation of why. Hey, I'd really like for us to do our transition time at 5 p.m. because it gives me a little bit more time to get him settled. Are you okay making this adjustment? Do you agree that this is in the best interest of our child? When you respond from care instead of hurt, there's a lot less reactivity that comes back from you. And the number one thing is I chased my child's well-being over my own pain. That Hawaii experience gutted me. There are two specific people on that side of the family that I really thought had my back that I have never talked to again. I can sit in a distant space and wish them well and hope that everything is working out for them, but have a good boundary that I don't want to cross paths with them. There will not be, nice fake conversations, but I had to choose my child's well-being over the personal pain I was experiencing. I didn't bring it to my child. I didn't let it leak over any more than it already had, and I did my best to bring it back in alignment. It's going to cost you. It's going to hurt, but that is your responsibility as the adult. Because the biggest thing, you have a responsibility to learn about your own heart. It's healing, what broke in the process. You have to take your rebirth like a job. Make it a non-negotiable in your life, and then your life will change because of it. My rebirth, or figuring out who the hell I was post-divorce, was my number one job. I prioritized everything. I prioritized that over everything. Why? Because it was the one way forward and out of the emotional roller coaster that I was on. I was tired of the recovery recoil of 2 steps forward and 1 step back. I was exhausted of trying to control all the details so that I was no longer hurting. But I had to learn myself. I had to learn my heart. I had to learn my healing journey. Where did some of these wounds actually come from? Because they weren't coming from my marriage or my divorce. They were coming from something I had learned a long time prior. Yes, it cost me friends, cost me some family, and it challenged me to become the woman I had been hiding my whole life. So I refused to apologize for owning who I was becoming any longer. I refused Erica's just really loud, or Erica's just really intense. Yeah, so I am. So I love loud. I love hard. All of those pieces, that is who I am. Erica's a little crazy. Erica likes doing some moon rituals. Erica likes using oracle cards, whatever it is. I decided to be true to the pieces that made me feel alive in my own life. And a lot of divorce coaches will teach you how to fight back, how to protect yourself, how to win, how to make sure you get what's yours and he gets what he deserves. And I understand why. That approach exists because when you are in pain, anger feels like power. But I have never seen winning the divorce, or in my Hawaii example, the argument, make someone whole again. I have seen women win every single battle and still lose themselves completely in the process. The fight might end, but the healing doesn't start until you decide to do the work. There are lots of tools to help you start this work. This weekly podcast, this is one. But my next recommendation for you in your journey is to scoop up the New You Blueprint. So the New You Blueprint is 90 minutes. It is a video that you play at home. There's no live calls. There's no homework. You literally show up with a pen, your journal, in 90 minutes. You will be guided through the work that I do one-on-one with my clients. First, you're going to get clear on who you are becoming. You are going to be guided to let go of the grief that is still sitting in your body, the grief that is threatening to take you out. And then you're going to create a plan to rebuild from the time you have every week to the people that you need to let go of, to the things that fill your cup. And I wrote this in today as I was recording. I was feeling so inspired to get you the blueprint that I'm actually going to drop a code for $100 off. I don't want money worries to be the thing that stops you from moving forward. And I really don't want you to waste time sitting in the shit longer than you need to. I'm a big fan of Fast and Furious and move through it. Stare it down, figure out what it's trying to teach you, and then let that shit go. You don't need to stay stuck for years. God, I see so many posts. Everyone's like, how long does it last? How long does it hurt? Depends how much you're willing to invest in learning who you are. So the link is in the show notes below to get the New You Blueprint. And what do we want the code to be, my friends? What do we want friends. Use the code FRIENDS for $100 off. Give the blueprint the time, invest those 90 minutes in yourself so that you can figure out who you want to be. Conscious uncoupling does not require two people. It only requires you. And it's not about being perfect or about being peaceful. It is about being committed to understanding that there is something different from the pain you are experiencing and the actions you want to take that are in the best interest of your kids. It's about what you do after the spiral. How do you transmute it? How do you learn from it? When you choose to post, it's about what you do after the spiral. You are going to be triggered. Your path will never be free of challenges, but you learn how to work through them. You learn how to stop letting them ruin your day, like the last day of your vacation. You learn how to take your power back. Because love does not end when the relationship does. It has to evolve. And so do you. You have to be able to get to a place where you can look at that person who you used to love deeply and with your entire being and find a level of respect, of peacefulness with it. Because when you do, then your divorce no longer defines who you are. And that evolution is entirely in your hands. No waiting for him to change. No waiting for one day for it to get easier. You get to drive the bus on that one. You guys, we'll be back next week with another episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club. Until then, give yourself grace. Go use that code word. Get $100 off. And by the time I see you next week for our next episode, I expect to hear that you have gone through the blueprint, that you have defined who you are becoming, and you have your first steps to truly start moving forward. And that's it. Another great episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast for women learning how to heal from their divorce. Tune in next week for more advice and tips to help you figure out life after divorce. And until then, give yourself grace, do the best you can, and know that this is all part of the process.